My name is President Barack Hussein Obama, and I have agreed to debate economist Harry Clapperrock on the federal government's unfunded liabilities. I'm not going to let those nasty conservatives get the best of me again. Welcome, Mr. Clapperrock. In our previous meeting we discussed the national debt. You stated that the national debt was just the tip of the iceberg. Would you care to elaborate?
Thank you, Mr. President. In our previous discussion, I was referring to the unfunded liabilities of Social Security, Medicare, the prescription drug program and federal pensions.
Would you care to explain what you mean by unfunded liabilities?
Unfunded liabilities, as the name implies, refers to liabilities which the federal government has incurred but has not paid for. Let me give you an example. If a private company started a pension plan in which the company agreed to pay pensions for its retirees, but never set any money aside in a separate account to pay for those pensions, then the amount owed would be an unfunded liability.
But, if a private company failed to fund their pension plans by putting the money aside in a separate account, they would be breaking the law and we would put them in jail, and, if they did put the money into a separate account but later stole it, then we would still put the crooks in jail.
Yes, Mr. President. If a private company did that, it would be illegal. However, when the federal government fails to properly fund its pension plans and steals the money, it is not illegal, and no one, not even Congress, can be held accountable.
Are you trying to tell me that the federal government has failed to properly fund its pension plans?
That is exactly what I'm saying. Not only has the federal government failed to properly fund its pension plans, but it has failed to properly fund Social Security, Medicare and the prescription drug programs.
Now wait just a minute. Both the employer and the employees are required to put money into the Social Security and Medicare plans every payday, and this money is invested by the Social Security Administration. Therefore, this cannot be an unfunded liability because we have the money.
Really, Mr. President? Do you know what Congress forced the Social Security Administration to invest the money in?
No, I don't know. But I'll bet it was invested in something really good, because that money belongs to our senior citizens.
No, Mr. President. That money was not invested into something really good. It was used to purchase U.S. government debt.
Well, you can't find a better investment than U.S. government debt. So, why do you have a problem with that?
Mr. President, as we discussed in our previous meeting, the federal government doesn't have the money to pay off its debts. It just rolls it over when it comes due. That means that when the Social Security and Medicare bills are due, the federal government will have to borrow money to pay for them.
Oh, come on, Mr. Clapperrock. I think you are exaggerating the problem. If this was as bad as you say, surely my advisors would have told me about it.
Actually, Mr. President, I have understated the problem. We have discussed the fact that the federal government has stolen the Social Security and Medicare funds, but we haven't even talked about the fact that Congress has promised senior citizens much more in benefits than they have funded. As of 2014, the unfunded liabilities amounted to $127 trillion. The government bonds held by the Social Security Administration amount to only $3 trillion. Therefore, Congress has overpromised benefits by 4,000%. This means that our kids and grandkids will have to pay $124 trillion in taxes to cover this debt. To put that into perspective, that amounts to $1,700,000 for each family of 4 in America. How long do you think you could avoid bankruptcy if you had to borrow money every month to pay for your bills?
Well, I don't know. You see, I've worked for the government all my life, so it's never been an issue for me. Maybe, if I had ever owned a business, I could relate to the problem.
The only way the federal government will be able to pay for these benefits will be to borrow more money, print more money, or raise taxes on our children and grandchildren. And none of these are good options. So, Mr. President, how do you propose to deal with this problem?
So, let me get this straight. We could continue to borrow money to pay for these unfunded liabilities, but we would never be able to borrow that amount of money. Correct?
That is correct. Besides, it is morally wrong for our generation to pass this amount of debt to our children and grandchildren.
And, you say that if we have the Fed print money to pay for these unfunded liabilities, that it would cause massive inflation.
Correct again, Mr. President. The Fed would have to print 42 times more money than is currently in circulation. That would cause inflation like they had in Germany in the 1930s.
Then the only other option is to raise taxes and let our children and grandchildren bail us out of this financial mess the government has created.
But, once again, Mr. President, it would be morally wrong to do that. Do you want your children to have to bear this burden?
Why do I always have to come up with the solutions to our problems?
Because you are the president. The people elected you to handle the difficult problems. You have refused to work with Congress, so I guess you'll have to fix this one on your own.
There is another solution that you failed to present. I can simply kick the can down the road. I'll ignore the problem like all the other presidents have done. If I could just get rid of you pesky conservatives, I wouldn't have to deal with these problems. They will all go away if you would just stop talking about them, so, why don't you just leave? This country isn't big enough for liberals and conservatives. We don't need you.
I think you are onto something, Mr. President. We'll form a new government based on the Constitution as originally envisioned by our founding fathers.
There you go again. Using racist terms like the Constitution and the Founding Fathers. Next you'll throw in Chicago as another racial slur. It's no wonder that you want your own country. You can keep your dirty air and dirty water and no one will notice when you throw Granny off the cliff.
Our new country will restore the rights of the people and the states. We'll constitutionally limit the size of the government. Spending and the national debt will be limited to 10% of the gross domestic product. We'll eliminate the Fed. We'll have a flat tax of 15% with a $10,000 deduction for each taxpayer. There will be no other deductions and no tax credits for individuals or corporations. We'll virtually eliminate the IRS tax code. The government will no longer be able to take private property to protect endangered species. There will be a balance between the economy and the environment. Then, you bleeding heart liberals will be left to self-destruct. If you want more information on secession and what the new country will look like, go to secednowusa.com. This is the most comprehensive website on secession. It covers the right to secede, reasons for secession, and what the new government will look like. Please tell all your friends. We need to take action now before the United States implodes.